Hello, welcome to Producer Profile. I'm Stella Winston, along with Orville Nelson. Welcome, Orville.
Thank you, Stella.
Today, our guest producer is Erwin Eisenstein. Ironstone.
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 Yes. Einstein, Ironstone. Okay, Erwin has a show called Justice in America, and that's America with a question mark. And he questions whether or not justice is in America. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Stella. Thank you, Orville.
I think it's going to be a very interesting show for the audience because his topics are in Ironstone.
Right.
Topics that are always to do with, quote unquote, the little people that get caught up in the system. So I look forward to today.
Yes.
Actually, I'm waiting to see some of the roles. What we did is we sort of picked a bunch of things that I was involved in as far as videotaping. And sometimes I'm in it, sometimes I'm just taping.
But before we get to the B rolls, I talked with another producer that worked with you, and you were described. Listen to this. You were described as a pimple on a judge's behind.
Who told you that?
I'm not giving it away. And they said,
Not a boil?
Yeah,
boil.
you're not a boil yet. And that the only way that the judge would get rid of you is to sit on it and pop it.
Did I ever?
Explain it. Why would they
I
say that?
don't know.
Ex-
I was only
put
in.
him on the spot very soon.
But I want to know what motivated you to take an interest in the law, because
Well,
I know that your day job has nothing to do. His day job has nothing to do with the law. You are
a programmer,
Yeah.
systems analyst, work with computers. I went through a divorce, and years and years ago, parts of it are still going on.
Yes, still with you.
Yeah, and the reason is that there are certain areas that are so outrageous, and people really don't understand what goes on in court until they actually are there.
Very true, very true.
And you're just totally unprepared for what does go on. And what I try to do with other people is explain to them and say, whatever happens, you're not going to believe it.
Well, having said that, tell me, your show is called again?
Justice in America?
And
Question mark.
Yes, question mark. How long has it been on the air?
About 2.5 or 3 years.
Okay, and when does it air?
It airs the first Thursday of each month now, and it's 9 and 5.
Okay. Now, Stella gave me, I just walked in, and Stella gave me a bunch of things here to look at. And I know you have a few B-rolls. He has a few.
Well, this first B-roll is with a politician.
Right.
And
I think,
go ahead and.
well, we should, if they can get that one going, and then as it goes, we can watch it on the monitor and make comments. It dealt basically with the lack of controls within the medical profession. And I think that Orville participated in this one. In fact,
I think I know which one it is.
He interviewed.
It was sickening. But let's go right to it.
Okay, well, that's why. Let's see the
that.
B-roll, and then we can
Yeah.
talk about the issues, because there are a whole bunch of issues related to, number one, the abuse by the medical profession, the abuse by the legal profession who lets them get away with it, the lack, for example, they took, and I think you were there with me, that animals have more rights than kids.
Well, let's go right to it because we have so many B-rolls.
Okay.
Here it is.
He was talking about the difficulties with health care in the United States. He was talking about, in fact, you raised the issue of Tuskegee, where, in fact, people were used, minorities, blacks were used, and were experimented on. And what that B-roll was a hearing about kids whose names were gotten from family court. And I think 15 of the 16 kids were either black or Hispanic, from minorities. And what happened was they used drugs on them. And the drugs, fen-phen, exactly.
And they wanted to do some testing. So what they did was they found some inmates who had little brothers. And after finding that out, they were not supposed to, by law, be able to do that.
That's correct.
After finding that out, they visited and got in contact with the parents and under duress, kind of, little kind of push, said, your son, who's in jail, has tendencies might be passed down to the little brother. Basically, is
Yeah,
that correct?
that's correct.
So we have a drug we'd like to test.
So they appeal to their
So,
fear.
yeah.
that
Yeah,
they-
but not
No, it's
that.
more than
It's
that.
more than that. Because
Much
your
more.
son is in jail and you're a mother. If you say no to this, how is he going? You're wondering now, how is it going to affect my son? So now you have two sons who are affected by this in double jeopardy. If you say no because you're protecting your younger son, you're fearing that because of this, what about probation? What about all these other things? You're starting to wonder now. So they're
Right.
having a double bind.
Right.
So
Yeah.
go ahead.
Well, I was going to say one of the things is, and a little further in the B-roll, you actually have Orville asking him questions related to this. For example, the kid here they were talking about was 6. The drug had never been tested on anyone below 12. They had never, in fact, had animal tests related to this. They effectively pressured a parent. You talk to a doctor and you have a certain amount of faith in doctors. And the answer is you have to question.
Okay, the B-roll is ready. I'm not sure if this is the,
Okay, this
the
is the
same
s-
B-roll or it's the
It's another one.
Well, let's
next
see what it is.
Let's see
Okay,
what it is, and then
okay.
we can just talk about it. Okay,
Yeah.
let's go to the B-roll.
Okay, this is on Blanche Wiesen Cook.
Okay, and then we can talk about
Okay.
that. So there's audio with it.
I'm really very happy to be here on this first International Women's Day of the new century, or the year 2000, and in a room filled with the great food that was served. And I noticed that a lot of you are carrying roses, and I was thinking as I saw you come in with roses, bread and roses, which was an old, Emma Goldman
You had
Union
chose this
vision.
B-roll because it has
Right.
something to do with the Freedom of Information Act.
Right.
What happened with this particular
now,
author?
Blanche Wiesen Cook is an expert on Eleanor Roosevelt. Now, how did she become an expert? Basically, she had to file a FOIL, Freedom of Information Law, and the federal law is 5 U.S.C. 552, but that's not important.
Okay.
In order to get access to information about Eleanor Roosevelt. They had between 50 and 75 boxes of information that were being held by the FBI because when she was, wife of FDR, she was involved in lots of meetings and lots of confidential stuff.
Yes.
And they felt that it might be at national risk. More at risk, I think, was the issue about Eleanor Roosevelt. She was a real wild woman.
Yes.
And the thing that I liked, and I listened to Blanche talk, is this is Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And it was drafted in 1948, and the primary author was Eleanor Roosevelt. And you say, how did that happen? She was appointed to the United Nations Committee from the United States. And by the way, that lecture was given on Women's Day at DC 37 because, again, she was a union person.
Okay.
And one of the issues is Eleanor Roosevelt was an orphan, and she had to live with her mother-in-law, which is Franklin D. Roosevelt's.
No, I don't mean to cut you.
Okay.
But you know that it's a 28-minute program.
Yes, I
And
know.
you have so much information
Okay,
for the
fine.
public.
But the whole point of that was that she was able to get hold of boxes and boxes of
information.
And if she hadn't used that law, she wouldn't have been able to.
Yes, and
get
she
it.
never would have been
And
able.
what's the name of that law again?
It's Freedom of Information,
Act.
And you call it FOIL.
FOIL,
FOIL.
or FOIA.
FOIA.
Either one. In New York State, it's FOIA, Freedom of Information Act. Federally, it's Freedom of Information Law.
Okay.
It allows you to get access to information from the government.
Okay.
Now, this next B-roll deals with that article, what she wrote. It's called the Declaration
Of
Human Rights.
Yeah.
And Edward Ray.
Edward Ray, who is a retired federal chief judge of the Court of International Trade, gave a lecture also on the Declaration of Human Rights.
Now, does he use this booklet that Eleanor
Yes,
Roosevelt?
he does.
Okay.
So let's go to the B-roll.
Okay. Good morning. My name is
Piece we just
Erwin.
saw.
Okay.
That
Okay.
particular piece we
Right.
just saw. Now, what did you want to show us?
Okay. Well, basically, Edward Ray spoke about the Declaration of Human Rights. And he basically came here as a 5 or 6-year-old, not knowing English. And he grew up in Brooklyn. And he rose to one of the highest positions in the judiciary in the United States. And one of the things he did is there was a case he was involved with that is Foreign Sovereign Immunities Act, and it dealt with the human rights of Americans overseas.
Okay.
And it was called Nelson versus Saudi Arabia. And he found for Nelson, Nelson was tortured in Saudi Arabia. Nelson basically found that they were using defective parts in hospitals and putting people at risk. And he reported it to his supervisors in Saudi Arabia. They locked him up, tortured him. And when he finally got back to the United, he went, basically his wife called the embassy, and they finally, after 40 some odd days, and there were literally books about all the tortures, he got back into this country, and he sued them, and he sued the company that, placed him there for violation of human rights. And there are exceptions in the Foreign Sovereign Immunities Act. Many of the exceptions are for torture and violations of human rights.
Now, I have a question. Now, all this is great, but I know that you have, is there a way you're tying this in with like ACDs and things like that? For the general public who are watching this.
Fine. An ACD, by the way, is an adjournment contemplating dismissal.
Do you want to get to that, or am I rushing you?
Well,
Actually, the next B-roll, when they have it ready, is on the Supreme Court Justice Kennedy.
But that doesn't talk about that.
Yeah.
The issues that each one of these, Judge Ray, for example, found one way. The Supreme Court found another way. And it found another way because it got pressure from the State Department, who came in on the side of the Saudis. Now, Justice Ray talked about the Declaration of Human Rights because he felt that every person, should have a right, a day in court, if they're tortured. That violates the standard Declaration of Human Rights. The reason I raised it is, first we talked about Eleanor Roosevelt.
Yes.
And he did also about the drafting of this document. He, in fact, wanted, and talks in later lectures, about the United States changing its laws to allow for, a cause of action against foreign governments for violations of human rights.
Now, so the Supreme Court Justice Kennedy, what will he be talking about?
Okay,
on
I
the
just
same-
took a little clip, and
Let's
what
see
it is just, he's talking about ethics, and it's just,
Ethics.
and again, it's sort of an interesting clip. I just wanted to show that, I've been exposed to so much, and there's so much in the city.
Well, let's see the tape.
Okay, just a drop.
All of us hope that it will not be his last, and we hope that when it's all over, he will agree that the warmth of our greeting and hospitality will, to a certain degree, compensate for the snow and the cold that is outside. It is my great privilege and high honor to turn the microphone over to Justice Anthony M. Kennedy of the United States Supreme Court. Justice Kennedy.
Thank you very much, Judge. And of course, it's a pleasure to be with my good and longtime friend, Ed Ray, again, and to be at the St. John's Law School. Judge, you and I have something in common. We both love to teach. And I'm not going to ask you whether you like teaching more or judging more, and I hope you're not going to ask me that question either. But we've both taught for many, many years, and it's remarkable how rich and exciting the law becomes. Ed, when did you begin teaching?
1947.
1947. Well, I thought I was at it a long time. I've been teaching since 1964, and you'll give a class 1 year and it'll be
as well as judges. And I think they like to have exposure to young students because basically they're supposed to mold lawyers to function ethically. Now, my position is it doesn't happen.
No, it doesn't. I don't believe
It's someplace between what they're supposed to do and what they're doing, there's something that's missing. Now, one of the things I've always thought of, and other states do have it, when you file a complaint against an attorney, it should be open to the public. It shouldn't be determined in a closed hearing. In New York, there's a law called Judicial Law 90, and that law leaves discretion, and the chief judge of each appellate division in New York State can open those hearings, but the answer is they don't, and that's outrageous. The other thing that happens in many other states is the majority of people who are judging attorneys for their conduct are not attorneys. And obviously, if you have police judging police, you have a blue wall of silence.
Right.
If you have judges judging judges, you have black robes of silence.
Okay,
you need to get the public involved directly, and that's one of the messages.
Now, one of the things that's very important to you is that people understand what an ACD is.
Yes.
So that when they go into a courtroom situation, and let's say you and I are accused of something, and they say, well, can you, will you accept an ACD? What does ACD and what does it mean exactly?
Okay, an ACD is an adjournment contemplating dismissal.
An adjournment contemplating dismissal.
In other words, if there are no complaints filed against you that are related to this one, it's dropped and there's no more processing. But what it does is it prevents you from saying, I'm innocent. Why should I have to accept an ACD? And one of the reasons you have to accept it is that if you can't afford an attorney, they appoint an attorney to you. That attorney sells you out.
Yes.
They say, accept it because it's just nothing and it'll be dismissed.
Now, in terms of an ACD, does that, let's just say something else happens to you on the street, and let's just say you get killed by a police officer, and Mayor Giuliani looks at your record, sees an ACD there. Can he use it against you and say, this person was in trouble before?
In fact, you don't have to be killed. Basically, if it's in a housing situation, a neighbor complains about you, you're black, she's white, the police say, what did you do? We want to talk to you downtown. We're arresting you. She said you threatened her.
Check your records and
no, forget, before they even ask your side of it, they drag you down and they can lock you up.
But where's the ACD come
Fine.
in?
Going to court, you're appointed an attorney from Legal Aid or any of the other groups, and the attorney says, look, the prosecutor says they don't want to prosecute this because it's a nonsense case with a neighbor. Why don't you just accept an ACD?
No, but we've accepted the ACD in the previous one. This has happened.
2 months later, the same woman who's crazy calls the police again, 911, and says, he's doing it again. He's making noise. He's harassing me. Please come arrest you. And now, instead of having just a nonsense thing, you can be charged, and basically your sentence can be 2 to 5 years or longer.
So once you have this ACD on your record, and you're picked up for anything, a misdemeanor or anything like that, you're now gotten in trouble again.
They can't use it against you if it's a separate type of thing. But if it's something similar, like the same neighbor who complained the first time, and it was basically a bogus complaint.
And the length of time is about 6 months you have?
It's either 6 months or a year.
Okay. All right.
And what happens is, if you don't accept it, they'll drag you back to court over and over again.
We had an incident. You want to elaborate on that? Because maybe the public can understand. Okay.
Well, Orville was walking along, and I don't know what time, probably about midnight.
It was on Fulton Street.
Yeah.
And
Minding his own. He was probably coming out of BCAT after an edit at 10 or 11 o'clock at night.
It was around Franklin Avenue.
Okay. In any case, he was stopped by a couple of police officers, probably 3 or 4. And they said, "What are you doing here?" First of all,
No, what it was they asked me,
Okay.
what do you have in your bag? I was drinking something, and they wanted to know what was in the bag.
and they have
It
no
was in a
reason-
bag.
Yeah, they have
So
no
what I
reason
said
to.
was, "Officer, I am busy, and I'm heading somewhere, and I need to get there quickly. What I have in my bag, I really don't want to discuss with you. And is there a problem?" Okay, it
Almost
eventually-
right. What you had to
Well,
say, what you had to say is, you have an articulable probable cause to stop me. Am I stopped or being arrested?
So the question for the audience, for the people viewing is,
Yeah.
what do you do when an officer approaches you? What is that you ask?
Do you have an articulable probable cause to stop me or arrest me? Am I being stopped or arrested? That's a whole different show.
Well, see, okay.
But you're right.
There was another video that we wanted to go to, and there was audio. But I
Right.
wanted to know, how do you feel about TV in the courtroom?
Okay. I want TVs in the courtroom, and I'll tell you why. There are so many things that happen that never appear on the record. And I was going to say, if I, for example, stand up and say, "How can you express anything?" That appearance never shows up. If, in fact, I am dressed like this, I'm neat and whatever, I'm viewed one way. However, if I begin to take my tie off and strip, whatever, oh, absolutely.
Now you understand
I'm
about the
gone.
boil. Now you understand.
Now, you do this in the courtroom?
No, well, of course I do. I say, "Judge,
Oh,
would it
no.
impact you in any manner?"
Be careful,
if in fact I would appear differently, because if I
In fact, maybe even instead of white, being black.
exactly, and if I don't come in with a
How
jacket,
far are you taking this, Erwin?
well, until
The whole
until
way,
I
the
get-
whole. Come on.
until we get knocked off
my
the air, I'm going to show the difference. In fact,
So, how does this, why,
Okay,
what
the-
is
the
this, are you
issue
making
is-
a case for
the
TV in
answer is,
court?
I think that TV should be in the courts as long as a defendant, can you hold this for a minute?
Sure.
Wants the particular TV in the court. Because obviously, if I come in a particular way, I was wearing a tie, a shirt, and I look presentable. I don't know if my hair is out yet, but
Well, make your point,
usually-
yeah.
But the answer is that I'm viewed differently based
Yes, I am
upon
viewing you very differently.
how
Yeah, and there's a lot of people without money. There's a lot of people without proper clothing,
Okay.
quote unquote
And-
proper.
da 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 da. But I'm only going to go down to my shorts, so it's okay. I mean, I have to stop someplace though. but the issue is, the dean of Professor Law School, Dean Ferrick, wrote a report of about 150 pages justifying the use. Most people want cameras in New York courts. And they want them because judges act differently. They're better prepared. They're less likely to act hostilely. They're more likely to cooperate with non-attorneys. The attorneys are better prepared because
They're on camera.
Exactly. And although they act for the camera, they're better prepared, because if they're not prepared, they're going to look stupid.
And they wouldn't go to sleep.
Forget about exactly. In fact,
That's right.
there's a case, now I'm going to digress, before the U.S. Supreme Court, and it was a death case, a capital case. And the lawyer for the
Fell
person
asleep.
fell
Yes,
asleep
I remember
during the trial. And our Supreme Court said the appeal was denied because the defendant didn't say when the lawyer fell asleep,
Now, how
which
do you,
is outrageous.
how do you feel about court TV, like
I
Judge
think
Judy?
Judge
you know?
Judy is a farce. It's not a court. People sign contracts before they appear. There are settlements.
Now we're getting the wrap-up signal.
Yes.
Okay.
Now what I'm curious about ACD, people should not accept it.
I would suggest that people do not accept. And if, in fact, their lawyer tells them to accept, they should ask the judge, "Judge, my lawyer wants me to lie in front of the court.
Okay.
Can you tell me why I should lie, or why I shouldn't get a fair trial, and why my lawyer doesn't have enough money to get an expert?"
So we've got the wrap-up
Right.
signal.
Okay.
As you can see,
He's a firebrand.
we understand why he's the pimple on the judge's
Not
butt.
a boil.
A boy. We've been talking with Erwin Eisenstein Ironstone, and he has a show called Justice in America with a question mark. And I'm Stella Winston.
I'm Orville Nelson, and do tune into it. You'll learn a lot about law and how it affects us.
Okay. There were a whole bunch of other things.
Now, when is it airing?